Hey Ravens, good evening. First and foremost, welcome back. This is a review on Module 1, Week 2 and 3, so our first couple tasks that we've covered so far. So first and foremost, remember that with Schoology, we are doing work. You do not have to submit documents. All you have to do for assignments is you'll find the assignment that you're working on. You'll click on the assignment, and then over here on the left, it will say submit assignment. You'll click it, and all you have to do when the window pops up is type I've completed this assignment so that I know it's a visual cue for me to grade the assignment, but also it knocks it off of your task list when it goes to look at it, all right? Secondly, I want you to remember that everything from Module 1, the last due date for that is going to be January 31st, so next Sunday. But our first task that we're going to look at, we'll look in the OneNote notebook. The first task is going to be that types of variables. So review, do the reading, watch the video, and there's a little recap about the control, independent, and dependent variables. And then your task right here is for these 5 practice problems is to identify the independent, dependent, and control variable. Next, we have the practice writing a lab report. In this lab report, you are acting as if you were John. To first find this, you'll go to Schoology. You'll go to the 1.2 folder within Module 1. And then you'll click on the 1.01 Exploring Life. This will take you to the Florida Virtual School virtual textbook. And all you're going to do and read, if you have time, read through this. It has great information about pseudosciences and about kind of like just some review information from what you've learned in previous years. But we're going to jump to page 8. And right here is the information that you'll use about John and his science fair project. On the first slide, you'll find the hypothesis, the objective, the materials, the procedure, and you'll use this information to identify the independent, dependent, and control variables like it asked down here. All right, so the objective, like I said, the title, hypothesis, all that is found on that very first paragraph talking about John and his science fair project. The data table right here for John's data is what you're going to fill out as the next part of the task. And then you'll use the data table to answer the conclusion questions right here. And there's some reflection questions right there. So it's nothing too crazy. So you are filling it out as if you were John doing this experiment. And there's a couple information, there's some last bit of information about John's experiment. The next thing that we covered is the scientific method worksheet. The scientific method, remember, it's kind of our process as scientists as we go through and we do experiments. We don't just go into a lab blindly. We understand what we're observing, why we're doing the lab and everything. So this is a little video right here, plus your reading on page 6 of the same notebook for the same part of the textbook as the experiment. If you click on these little tabs, it will tell you, it will kind of give you some information about each step. Next, we reviewed the difference between law and theory. And you can read that and watch this TED Talk. It's an excellent resource to verify or to differentiate between law and theory. And then finally, the task for this step is to put in the steps of the scientific method. And for each step, identify what do you do at the steps. So you'll be paraphrasing what you learned on this slide for page 6 or whatever you grab your information from, and you're going to be inputting it right here. And then for this example of this step, just use John's experiment. So during the observe, what did you observe during this step as John? On 12.1C or 1.2C, we differentiated between quantitative and qualitative data. Remember, qualitative, the L in qualitative data makes me think of the senses. Disregard the spelling errors right here. You have sight, the 5 senses are sight, touch, smell, hearing, and taste. But remember, we do not taste anything in the lab. Next, we have quantitative data, and the N reminds me of a number, which numbers are what we use for measurements, right? So this data is measured. So for this task, and there's a Moo Moo Math video, they do excellent videos. So for this first part of the task, you're identifying which of these examples are quantitative or qualitative, or the number 1, or quantitative with the number 2. Be sure to change the color of your response, and how you do that is just highlight your response. You'll have a pop-up window, or if it doesn't pop up, you can right-click, go for the letter A, and you could change the font, but make sure it's a font that you can read. So like this yellow probably wouldn't be a good color. All right, so let's reselect that. And we'll choose a different color. But anytime you make a mistake in OneNote, it's okay. Don't freak out. They do have an undo button too. So I'll undo back to the same color. And then there's also a part 2 where you're going to write an example of qualitative and quantitative data. And then finally, it's your own personal opinion on what type of observation do you think is more scientific? Do you think qualitative? Do you think quantitative is more specific, or sorry, more scientific? Lastly, we talked about the building of a macromolecule. So we'll talk more about macromolecules on Thursday the 21st and Friday the 22nd. We'll talk a little bit more about macromolecules there. But I wanted to introduce this lab for the building the macromolecules. So you'll go to the 1.3 folder. And just like with John's experiment, you're pulling the information from the Florida Virtual School virtual textbook. So we'll click on the Chemistry of Life virtual textbook link. And this part of the textbook has excellent resources on the 4 different types of macromolecules: the proteins, carbohydrates, nucleic acids, and lipids. But for this specific lab report, we're going to be building macromolecules, the macromolecule of a carbohydrate. So we're going to be building glucose, actually, is what we're going to be building. So the first step, you'll read about it, and the objectives right there. So you can input that into your lab report. The next step is this response: how are larger molecules formed from atoms of smaller macromolecules? So you'll answer that response right here in order for you to move on. So you'll type something in, and I'll put in this is an example, if I can spell, and then you'll hit save, and then you'll click next. But before you do that, copy your response and paste it down here, because you have the same exact question right here. How are larger macromolecules formed from atoms of smaller macromolecules? So you'll copy and paste that there. On the next page, you're actually going to be building glucose. So you'll hit save, and I'll click next. You're actually going to be building glucose. Now remember, I put in a hint in your OneNote. If you click on this macromolecule presentation for this PowerPoint, on the very last slide, there's a hint that will really help you out. So each of these little bonds, each of these little lines that you see in the macromolecule is considered a bond, right? So I'll refer them as line or a bond. And you have 3 different types of atoms that will build this macromolecule of glucose. And I'm actually going to zoom out so I can fit the whole molecule. Actually, let's do this real quick. So anytime, if you like, this window right here is kind of small, I'm actually going to go a little bit further full screen so I can kind of get everything in. So you got 3 different atoms. You have carbon, which is C, hydrogen, which is H, and oxygen, which is O. Now, my little guide to this is that hydrogen can only bond one time. So you'll only find one line attached to the hydrogen. Oxygen bonds up to 2 times, and carbon can maximum do a bonding of maximum of 4 times. So what I would suggest, with there being so many hydrogens and with them only bonding one time, let's find each of these gray spots that bond one time. So for this spot right here, that has 1 line. So let's place the hydrogen there, but be very careful, because once you place an atom, you can't take it away, and you'll be forced, if you make a mistake, to reset it. And there's a reset down here at the bottom. All right. So then let's see. This one has a single line, so we place that there. That one has a single line. We can place it there. Single line. We can place. Oh, single line right there. So then we said that oxygen can bond twice, right? So it can have 2 lines. So if we look at this little diagram of ribose, it has a double bond. Or if we look at, that's only examples of oxygen that we have for 2 bonds there. But if we look at these gray spots, we'll count their lines. So there's a bond or a line right there, and a bond for a line right there. So we can place the oxygen right there. This gray spot has 1 line, 2, 3, 4. So 4 bonds or lines together. So that's not going to be oxygen. Let's count this one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope, not oxygen. Let's go to the right. This one has 1 and 2. That looks like that's going to be an oxygen. So let's throw an oxygen right there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope. But let's look at this one right here. 1, 2. So that's going to be oxygen right there. All right. Then finally, for carbon, we said that carbon bonds up to 4 times, right? So it'll be 4 lines. So for this top one, our only option for this one, 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds or 4 lines, is going to be carbon. 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds, carbon. 1, 2, 3, 4, carbon. So once you're finished with this, what I want you to do is take a screenshot. So if you're on a Windows or an MMPS device, you can type in snipping tool and you can use it. So you'll click on the app, you'll click new, and you'll drag it over. All right, so we have that there. It's already copied, so you can go down to the glucose molecule, and you can right click, and you could select paste. Give it a second for it to load. You can resize it and everything. But if you're on a Mac, you're gonna have to want to use Command, Shift, and the number 4. Hold those 3 buttons down at the same time. You'll be able to select what you want to take a screenshot of. But with a Mac, you'll have to hit Insert, Picture. Click where you want to insert it first, or else it's gonna go wonky. You're gonna click from a file on your laptop, and it's gonna be saved to your desktop automatically. Okay. And what I always do when I go to insert pictures, I'll click File, I'll choose File, and I'll go to you'll see on the left-hand side where it says Recent. I'll click Recent just because it's going to be the most recent saved file there. All right. So once you're done with that, you can also check your molecule and make sure it's correct. You'll see a check, and you go on to the next one. You'll build fructose and do the same thing. Find the bubbles that have 1 line or 1 bond, fill them in with hydrogen. Then find the bubbles that have 2 lines or bonds, and that's going to be oxygen, and fill in the rest with your carbon. Take a picture, and then you'll build sucrose. All right. So pretty much that's all we have. I know y'all had that lactase lab. I'm still working on it. I made the mistake of not having resources on how to calculate the rate of reaction. So you do not see it in your module 1 folder. I'm going to reintroduce that into your folder tomorrow. After I go over rate of reaction, because I did not put that in there for you. So I cannot expect you to understand rate of reaction. All right. So again, thank you so much for watching. I know this was a 12-minute video, but it's well worth it for you sticking around. And yeah, that's module 1 so far. Hit me up with questions. You know my email, robert.clifton@mmps.org. Or if you have Schoology, hit me up on there. And I will see first period tomorrow and second and fourth period on Friday.